Hi, my name is Eloise. I am an admissions tutor here with the Profs, and today we're going to be talking about the degree apprenticeship process and specifically how to formulate a CV for that process. So if you are thinking about pursuing a degree apprenticeship, we have lots of other videos specifically on that topic, including what it is, how to apply, how to research firms, as well as a comparison of the degree apprenticeship to the law degree. And those are on the screen right now, so please do go and check them out. But today we're going to be talking about one specific aspect of the recruitment process, and this is the legal CV. And this is important because it might be the first CV that you've ever written. So if you've done some work experience before, maybe you've had a part-time job, you might have done a short CV, but you might not have done anything official that you've actually submitted in order to get your first job or to apply to any kind of apprenticeship schemes. So in this video, we are going to look at where the CV comes in the recruitment process, what kind of role it plays, what you need to emphasise, the different headings you might want to consider when structuring your CV, and the importance of revising and updating your CV over time. And we're also going to give you a template that you can try for yourself. Looking at the purpose of the CV in the recruitment process, in terms of your legal apprenticeship application, this will often come at the point where you submit your online application to a law firm. So often you will be doing a cover letter and a CV together, and you might also be filling out some information in an online form. Now, every firm is different when it comes to what they ask for during the application process. So whereas some firms might just require you to do a CV and a cover letter, other firms might have you fill out an entire online application form with questions like, what are your greatest strengths? Give me a time when you showed teamwork. What do you understand about the commercial dynamics of a law firm? Things like that. But others might just require the CV process. Either way, it's important to have a CV on hand because not only will you need to submit it in most cases, but even if you don't, the information on your CV will be so important for filling out that online form with examples of your skills, your strengths, your weaknesses, your experience so far, and also for preparing for interview. So we're going to be talking through just a pretty typical structure for a CV, and it's important to note that there isn't any one perfect structure, so it does depend on your experience, what you want to emphasise, any preferences that you have around communicating this information, but it is important to include several main categories, so we're going to talk through them using the template. So we're going to start things off with your name. Obviously you have your name at the top of your CV, and it's important that your name is visible, that it is clear, that it is unmissable. Okay. So we're going to start things off with your name, and obviously it is important that your name is at the top of your CV, that it is clear and visible, unmissable, and this is because often if CVs are printed off, they might be in a huge pile of papers with lots of other people's CVs, and if people want to refer to your CV or remember your name or remember the things that you've written about in your CV, it's really important that you have a distinctive place for your name at the top of your CV. So under your name, some people do include what's called a headline, which is where you highlight a couple of skills that are fundamental to your capabilities as an employee. So think about a LinkedIn CV, for example. You have your name at the top, and then some people you might see saying things like driving customer success or improving the revenue of this business by X percentage over 10 years, something like that. So it gives you a little bit of a sense of the skill set of that person. Now, this isn't usually considered to be necessary for a degree apprenticeship CV because you often don't have work experience or enough work experience that you can really distill down into a headline. And also, everyone is kind of coming in with the same experience at that point because most of you will have come just straight from school level education. So it's more important that you're just clear, that you're concise, and that you include your skills and your experience further down the CV. The headline isn't necessary unless you have something that you really want to communicate. Most people will include personal information at the top of your CV, and you'll see lots of different kind of fancy layouts of how you can do this in really creative ways. It's probably important to note that the legal profession is quite traditional and formulaic in terms of the way that it conveys content, and this is often because the role of the lawyer is to express information in a very clear and concise way. So when you're writing your CV, it's important to bear that in mind, that if you are using graphics or anything fun like colours or different fonts, readability and clarity is your most important priority. So the personal information you might include at the top, things like an email, maybe a phone number, or how people can get hold of you. But again, this isn't essential because it will be submitted alongside your online application, unless you're applying to other jobs in a more traditional way, where you're sending in by email or sending in by post a CV. The next heading will often be education, and again, you may not have a huge amount to write, but it is important to include your GCSEs and your A-levels, and again, just making sure that whatever online application you're applying to, you've double-checked the requirements. So there are degree apprenticeship requirements for both GCSEs and A-levels for most commercial law firms, so double-checking those requirements before you submit your information on your CV is really important, so you can make sure you meet those requirements. And also so you can emphasise any requirements that they do have. For example, if they wanted you to show a particular grade in maths and English, you can make sure that you have those clearly at the top of your education section. In your education section, you might also want to highlight any particular academic achievements. So for example, prizes that you've won or particular essay competitions or things that you have succeeded in the past. But again, this isn't essential and really only if it applies to you. Next up, you have your experience section, and this is where you really talk about any kind of work experience that you've had before, including any part-time jobs or voluntary roles that you've had. And again, remember the key skills that you're trying to communicate here to the person reading the CV is that you have had some experience in a professional environment, which if you've seen our other videos on the degree apprenticeship route, which are on the screen right now, if you want to check them out, you will remember that showing professional abilities and a maturity of professional You will remember that showing professional abilities and a certain level of work maturity is really important when you head into the degree apprenticeship route because you will be in a big corporate environment from day one. So in your work experience section, you really want to emphasise any placements or work experience opportunities that you've had that enable you to get hands-on experience of life in that particular working environment. There are lots of different ways to highlight these skills, but you might consider something like the title of your work experience together with the dates and maybe a few bullet points about specific skills or opportunities that you gained from that experience. One key tip here is to check out the online application portal for whatever job or degree apprenticeship program you're applying to and see if they have any keywords about what they're looking for in their candidates. So let's say they are looking for someone who specifically is innovative and creative and ready to work in a fast-paced environment. You can then emphasise some of those skills through your work experience section so you can show how you already demonstrated or experienced that environment in other work experience contexts. If you say anything in your work experience about what you achieved or what you gained from that experience, the more specific the better, and even better if you have data about how many placements you did or what you did on those placements or changes that you suggested or made in work experience environments or part-time jobs, actual tangible things that happened during those experiences, the more precise the better. Next up, you might have a section for skills, and this is where you're really talking about the skills that you've developed over your time studying and any part-time work or work experience so far. And again, check back to the keywords or any kind of words on the law firm's website that emphasises what their cultural values are, the skills that they really prioritise in their lawyers, and also thinking about the commercial environment. So remember, when you go through a degree apprenticeship programme, you are immediately in an environment where your work as a lawyer is fundamental to solving or helping with a client's problem. So things like commercial awareness or practical ability to apply theory to facts, problem solving, creative thinking, time management, these are the kind of skills that are fundamental to the work of a commercial lawyer. One other tip here when it comes to describing your skills is to look at the actual application process for the law firm that you're applying to. So normally they will have on their website the stages of the application. So they say things like, firstly you'll do an online application, and then you'll do a video interview, and then you'll do an open day or an assessment centre. If you look down to see what kind of skills they'll be testing in that final stage of interview, they'll often tell you when you come to the assessment centre, we'll be looking for you to work in a team, to work strategically. We'll be looking for you to do a negotiation exercise. You can sometimes get a hint of the skills that they'll be looking to assess in the final stage of the process and emphasise them in your skills section of your CV. Next up, you have achievements, and there might be some overlap between skills and achievements. So as you're crafting your CV, my recommendation is to actually just make a list of all of the skills and achievements that come to mind, so everything that you can think of, and then you can separate them from that kind of master list. You will remember from our undergraduate university applications videos that this is a very similar process to crafting your personal statement, so writing out a whole list of your skills, your abilities, your achievements, and then you can select from there and apply them as you want in your CV or in your personal statement. So if you're someone who's applying on both tracks, this is a really helpful exercise for you. Achievements could encompass a huge variety of things, Normally in the law firm context, these will be things like positions of responsibility. So things within school, for example, taking a role within debating club or within politics club, or founding something or creating something or writing something. So remember that writing and producing your own opinions about something is a fundamental aspect of your work as a lawyer. So being able to articulate your own ideas. So any kind of essay competitions, anything you've written, articles, writing for the student newspaper. Also things around speaking, so advocacy work, maybe politics or debating club, maybe you've done a speech or a presentation somewhere, radio work or anything you've been doing within the school context, that could also be helpful. For example, in the law context, this is often things like positions of responsibility. So if you've had a role within debating club or politics club or law society within your school, if you've founded or started anything, this can really show authority and determination. Anything that you've written, so remember that writing is a key skill, the ability to advocate for yourself and to express your opinions. So anything you've written for essay competitions, for a student blog, for the student newspaper, things like that. Speaking as well is great, so advocacy in debating club or in law society, or even speeches or presentations that you've done in the school or work experience context. Remember, anything with titles or positions of responsibility is really important, so head girl, head boy, anything you can gather within your school environment, plus things that you've done within voluntary roles, so head of organisation within a certain charity that you're doing at the weekends or other things like that. Finally, coming down towards your interests, and you can see this is probably the least important part of the CV, and it's not that your interests aren't important, but they just aren't as relevant to your application as other elements, for example, work experience and your skill set. So returning to the main point of the CV, which is obviously to promote yourself as a candidate for this position, you want to think about the particular things that the recruitment team and the lawyers at that firm are looking for. Now, this isn't really just necessarily someone who is interested in, let's say, arts or sports, but if you can show that your interest in arts or sports is giving you a more creative mindset, a wider perspective, an ability to commit to something, determination, motivation, and a wider pursuit of your interests in the world around you, then this can show a really well-rounded application. At the bottom of your CV, you will normally see the phrase references on request. Again, this might not be necessary for your legal CV if it's being submitted alongside an online portal, which will often also ask for references, but it's pretty typical to have it in there, so it might be good to add the phrase at the bottom, references on request. Sometimes you will see contact details added again at the end. Now remember that your CV shouldn't really be that long, especially if it's being accompanied by a cover letter. So the cover letter really is the place to demonstrate your passion, your commitment to the firm, your understanding of cultural values. The online application form is normally the place to include details, specifics, and they might also give you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about your skills. So the CV is really there to capture like the foundations of your application and the essentials of what they need to know. It shouldn't go on beyond 2 pages ever. So a lot of people say that your CV should never be over 2 pages, and that's certainly true. And often 1 page will suffice, especially if you can condense that information in a very efficient way. Remember, this is one of the most fundamental skills as a lawyer. It's the ability to be concise and precise with your language. So you shouldn't need to include your contact details again at the end because they will be pretty visible and not too far away at the top. As you move through the application process, it might be that you need to check and update your CV. If you can get feedback on your CV, especially during the application process, even better, and use that feedback to enhance and make your CV more powerful. Remember that the most important stuff is going to be towards the top of your CV, so if you do need to make more space, it might be that you take some out of your interests or condense that section down a little bit more. And then finally, and of course this is obvious, but please do make sure to check and double check the formatting, the grammar and the spelling of your CV. It can actually be a huge barrier to entry if there are errors in your CV, your cover letter, or any other aspect of your online application form. And this is because, as we've talked about before, the process is so competitive, and often the first thing and the only thing they'll know about you is the materials that you submit as part of your application. So these need to be as precise as possible and free from any errors. If you know that this would be challenging for you for any reason, please do reach out and get support from your school, from a mentor, from anyone else who can assist with a proofreading of your CV. While there is no one way to craft your CV, this should give you a pretty good template for starting with, so please do go back and pause the video if you need to make notes of all those headings and have a go at formulating your own legal CV. If you did like this video, please like and subscribe. Drop a comment below if you have any questions. We will get back to you. Send it to a friend who's also thinking about applying to degree apprenticeships or anything else within the legal profession. And of course, if you need any help, guidance, assistance or support in your process of applying to a degree apprenticeship or a law degree, please do reach out. We have a whole team of experienced admissions consultants here at the Profs ready to help you with your journey into law. The information is on screen right now. And as always, best of luck with your applications.